All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ajit Gopalakrishnan. I'm the Chief Performance Officer for the Department of Education. Welcome to this first session on Behind the Numbers, from Data to Dashboards. Our objective for these sessions, we have 3 in this series, is to really show how different data sources feed into and are incorporated into the dashboards and reports and accountability indicators that are published on EdSite, with the goal that you can take proactive steps to ensure that the data you submit and certify are complete and accurate as you possibly can make them. Our first session is focused on the next generation accountability indicators 5, 7, and 12 that are fed by the Teacher Core Student TCS data collection. And I'm joined here by 3 of my colleagues, Corinne Felder, who is in our data collection unit, and she manages the TCS collection. Danielle Bousquet, who is in our EdSite group, and processes all the TCS data, and also manages all the accountability calculations as well. As well as Renee Savoy, who's our state NAEP coordinator, but gets roped into a lot of other things that I end up getting involved with. Thanks all of you for preparing and presenting this session. Before I turn it over to Renee to get started, just on logistics, the session is being recorded, and the handouts that we're showing and these the slide deck will be sent to all registered attendees, all registered individuals. So even if you don't attend the session, everybody who registered will get a copy of the slide deck as well as a link to the recording. In terms of Q&A, we've got the chat open. So as they are presenting, and we have a lot of information to cover and a lot of nuance here. So as they're presenting, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will respond to them as we go. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Renee to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I know in the room today we've got accountability experts and others who are really well versed in the intricacies of TCS. So the goal of this session, as Ajit said, is to help everyone develop a deeper understanding of how these two are connected. They are inextricably linked. So hopefully we can help you see some of that today. We're going to cover 3 indicators, 12, 7, and 5. Notice they are in reverse order. And that is due to the fact that we think probably indicator 12 is the easiest to understand, and then they sort of ramp up in complexity. We want to be able to answer 3 questions in our review of each of these indicators, and that is, how are the TCS data used in the calculation? How can your district best use the TCS system reports, and there's a lot there, to help improve reporting accuracy? And then to what extent are those TCS reports, again, available within the system, an actual preview of what we're going to see when next gen results go public? And then Corinne will also give us a few other TCS resources and some important timelines we need to be mindful of. So with that, I want to give you some general notes in advance. So today we're focusing on TCS, but June PSIS is a really big player in these calculations. So we wanted to just kind of establish that out front, that those are used for denominator calculations. And Danielle will be talking at great length about how that's used. And then finally, it's really important that TCS submissions are complete and accurate, because those course records for those students are connected to the student SACID and follow that student from school to school, district to district. So we want to make sure that we're giving the appropriate credit to schools and districts when we're calculating accountability reports. And to do that, the TCS records really need to be accurate and complete, etc. So indicator 12, arts access. Again, probably one of the simplest indicators to understand. This is the percentage of students in grades 9 through 12 who are participating in at least one dance, theater, music, visual arts, or media arts course in the school year. So if you're typical high school, grades 9 through 12, we're looking at all the kids, 1 year snapshot, really simple. This indicator was tweaked in 21-22 to include media arts. And, there are different parts of the accountability system that are evolving based on feedback from the field. So we're listening, we appreciate your input. And if you want to see kind of how the decision process worked to expand Indicator 12, I have a link here in the slide deck to one of our Performance Office newsletters from December 2019 to explain that process. So while the calculation of Indicator 12 is really super simple, I think the most confusing part of it, or the part that causes the most questions, is really the coding of the courses. When we are deciding which courses are going to be in this calculation, it's based on codes. It's not based on course names. We're not looking at course descriptions. It's codes exclusively. So every course code, we also refer to these as SCED codes, that are submitted through TCS, they have an embedded subject code in that string of numbers. The first 2 digits of the SCED code signals to us what the subject area is for the course. So any course that starts with 05, that's the visual and performing arts SCED code, that signals to us that's an arts course. And so there are 2 examples here on this slide. There's web design and web page design. You look at the course names, you're like, oh, those are very similar. There's really no difference. But there's a big difference because the actual code of the course, web design, has that 05, which tells us that that course, the content, is aligned to the National Core Arts Standard. Whereas web page design starts with subject code 10. Subject code 10 is an information technology course. So the first one counts positively towards Indicator 12. The second one does not. And so how can you check what's reported in TCS? I'm just going to ask Corinne to go over this verification report for us.
So first of all, can you hear this? Is this one working? Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
Great. So before we get into this actual TCS report, it's helpful to know that there's 2 levels of access into TCS. You might have the TCS user role, or you might have the TCS certifier role. So both roles can go ahead and view these reports, but the TCS user can only actually change this data. TCS certifier is the only one who could certify or electronically sign off on this data. So if you have one of the roles and need the other one, or you don't have any of these roles, you should reach out to your LEA security manager and they could give you access to TCS. So this is the TCS Arts Access Report. It counts the number of students reported in TCS and the June Pieces collection for the students who participated at least one dance, theater, music, visual arts, or media arts course. So a reminder that these are only the courses that begin with 05. So it's a great idea to go ahead and check your numbers and make sure that they are accurately reflecting this indicator. So next slide. Another report we have built in is the TCS record credit count by subject report. So this one is useful not only for indicator 12, but other indicators as well. So this one is parsed out by subject. And if you see a core subject area such as math, and there's a drastic change from a prior year to this year, there might be a problem in reporting your data. But today we're looking at indicator 12. You could see that fine and performing arts is highlighted. And if you wanted to drill down a bit more, you could click on that blue number. So in this case, it's 464, and you could see which students do have those course codes beginning with 05.
And just to, Renee, if you could just flip back to that slide, the prior slide, just want to establish that the codes, the 05, whatever those coding structures are established locally by the district. So, so please go back. If you have questions about the completeness of the data, we've had questions, for example, where a district missed reporting a whole school or a whole section of courses, for example, second semester courses or first semester courses, as the case may be. And both the reports that Corinne showed would give you a sense of whether the data you're reporting are complete or not. In those instances, when districts raised those questions, we were able to go into this report and it was visually very apparent that certain courses had not been reported. And when you click on that blue number, as Corinne mentioned, it expands the SAS, and then you can actually see which course enrollment records are actually uploaded into TCS, and it's fairly evident what is not uploaded if you think it's incomplete. So again, just to elaborate on that. But any questions on this before we keep moving here, because we do have a lot and we want to make sure. All right, let's see. I see Frederick. I'm gonna allow your mic, so please go ahead. You can unmute yourself. And if that doesn't work, oh, there you go. Go ahead, Frederick.
We've been trying to get the list of SCED codes, or at least a list of the prefixes to put into our SIS, and we've had a hard time receiving a list of those prefixes. Are those available?
Yes, so I'm not sure why it was difficult. I do apologize for that, but it is listed on the TCS help site, which linked later in this presentation, and it's also on the National NCS website,
Sure.
the SCED code website. So I'll go ahead and I'll put a link in the chat, and again, it will be at the end of the presentation.
And that specifically links them to these indicators?
It does go by the subject codes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving right along, Ajit, we good?
Yep, moving right along.
Okay, right on time. Indicator 7, this is the on-track indicator, on track to high school graduation at the end of grade 9. So this is the percentage of ninth graders earning at least 6 full credits in the year. Note, this is an update from previous years. In 21-22, we upped the standard from 5 to 6 credits because of the changing state level graduation requirements. So now it's more in line. I will turn it over to Danielle so she can get into some of the intricacies of the calculation.
Alrighty, thanks. So the important thing to remember with indicator 7 is that the population of students, your denominator, is always going to be the students who were in grade 9 during this current accountability year. Okay, so and then the numerator is going to be the number of those students in grade 9 in this current accountability year that earned at least 6 credits. So so we're going to start with the easiest scenario and work our way up a little bit. So can we just go back really quick? Sorry. So for schools and districts who only have grade 9 students, so your typical high school, for example, 9-12 school, and do not have grade 8 students, this is the easy one. Take all of your 9th graders, those who had 6 more credits are going to be in your numerator. All of your 9th graders are going to be your denominator. Okay, it's sort of exactly what you're expecting. When it comes to, if we do it in reverse, right? So schools and districts with grade 8, but not grade 9. So here, you know, your typical 6-8 middle school. We can go to the next one. So, you know, your typical middle school or your typical K-8 school, anything like that. Your population is still going to be this year's 9th graders. So for you guys, that'll be your last year's 8th graders. So you're going to be looking at the number of students enrolled in your school for the previous accountability year who were also enrolled in a Connecticut public school for grade 9. So they may have gone to a different district, they may have gone to a different school. That doesn't matter. They're still going to be included so long as they were attending a Connecticut public school. They could have passed all their courses in 8th grade. That doesn't actually affect this. It's only whether or not they got 6 credits in 9th grade. That hopefully makes sense. And then we have some fun. So if you're a school or district that has both 8th and 9th grade, so a K-12 school or district 6-12, 5-9, anything like that, basically the way you want to think about it was you're going to take all the students from that first slide plus all of the students from the second slide. So all the students who are currently in 9th grade plus all the students who in the previous year were in 8th grade. And this is not an unduplicated count. So if you've got a student who was in grade 8, but not in grade 9 in your district, they count once. A student who was in grade 9 in your district, but not in grade 8 the previous year in your district, they count once. But if the student was in your district for both 8th grade and 9th grade, then that student is going to count twice toward your score. So you get a quick example. And this example, if you look at the quick links, there's a much longer explanation of this example. But so quickly, the idea is that, so if you've got your 8th, so this is, imagine you're in accountability year 2020, 2020, or 2021, 2022. So that would have been last year, right? So we're looking at the 9th graders from that accountability year, 21, 22, and the 8th graders from the year before that, that 2020, 2021, right? So now, so students A, B, D, and E here were in the district for both 8th grade in the previous year and 9th grade in the current year. So you can see when you look at the denominator, those students are included in both the 8th grade side and in the 9th grade side. So, so they're all there. And then only students A and E were on track. So therefore, only students A and E of those 4 are going to appear in the numerator. Now let's take student C here. So student C is in your district for 8th grade in the previous year, and then in the current year, they moved to a different district in Connecticut. So you may not know whether or not that student is on track because they're in a different district, but they're still going to be included in your calculation because we'll have their scores. So they'll count once. So you see the student C is in the denominator and the numerator because they were on track for the 8th grade side, but not the 9th grade because the 9th grade side belongs to the other district. Similarly, student F was in your district for 8th grade, but then moved out of state, or they went to a private school or somewhere where we're not going to have their records. That student is removed entirely from both the numerator and the denominator because they're not in the current year's 9th graders. So we don't see them in either the numerator or denominator for either grade. Then students G, H, and I are the opposite. So students who were in a different district for grade 8 in the previous year, and then moved into your district for 9th grade in the current year, right? So those students will not be included in the denominator or numerator for the 8th grade side, but they will be included for the 9th grade side, right? So once you have all of that figured out, right? So which students count once, how many students count twice? So these right? So you can just look at 8th grade. For out of 8th grade, we have 1, 2, 3 students were on track out of 5. Can't read on my own screen. Yeah, right. So we have, so I'm pointing to something you can't see. I forget that it's not my screen. So those first 5 students are all going to count towards the denominator, and the 3 that are on track counts towards the numerator. So for an 8th grade only school, right, they would be 3 out of 5. For a 9th grade school, right, only looking at those students in 9th grade, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students total that were in your district in 9th grade. 4 of them were on track. So for the 9th grade school only, you'd be a 4 out of 7. For the entire district, we sum those up. And so, like we said, this student A, B, D, and E, because they were in your district both in 8th and 9th grade, they appear twice. So we get the 5 students from 8th grade, the 7 students from 9th grade. So we have a denominator of 12. And then for the numerator, you've got the 3 students from 8th grade, the 4 students from 9th grade, for a total of 7. So the district's percent on track would be 7 out of 12, or 58.3%. I know that's super, super complicated, but like I said, feel free to look at the quick links for that description if you need some additional help.
I think it's great, Danielle. That was an excellent explanation. I think glad we're recording this session. It's worth going back and listening to that and playing that over. So please go ahead. Excellent job.
Thanks. So my last note here on indicator 7 is students who repeat 9th grade. So they were in 9th grade both in the previous accountability year and the current one. So the first thing is that their credits are only counted for the school year that they're currently in. So if you've got a student who last year earned 3 credits as an earned 3 credits as a 9th grader, repeated 9th grade, and earned 4 credits during that second year, we don't sum them and say, well, they got 7 total credits, so they're on track. It's only that current accountability year that gets counted. So those 4 credits in that second year, they're not on track. The second thing is that because they weren't in grade 8 in the previous year, they won't be counted twice in any district. So we're not going to go back 2 years and find out what school they were in 8th grade and attribute it backwards. We're not going to go back and look at their previous 9th grade year and use that as an 8th grade year. We're only counting, that student will only get counted once as a current 9th grader. They won't have that previous year. And with that, I think I hand it off to Corinne.
I'm sure Danielle is so happy to be done with that slide, and I'm always very grateful she gets to do that explanation. So that first report I showed you in TCS was very straightforward in that it closely matches the next generation indicators. So this report has significantly fewer differences than the next report, but there are some nuances between this actual built-in TCS report and indicator in the indicator. So the minimal discrepancy is because it does not include the students who were in your district for 8th grade. So a couple of features I'd like to point out about this report is just like the other one, you could click on any of those blue numbers and you could see the actual records that contribute toward those counts. This report, like all the TCS reports, you could export to CSV, so you could sort it in any way. So that could be incredibly useful for error checking and data validation. Now, something really important I'd like to point out is that TCS only accepts a 4-character value in the credit earned and available credit field. So what this means is if you have a course that's worth 1/8 of a credit, you would want to round that course. You cannot put 0.125. Now, this becomes very important if you have a number of 1/8 credits because you have the potential of not quite hitting that 6 credit mark. So you definitely want to round. We have an example online where you might want to round 0.125 to 0.13. So our next slide. So there is another report within TCS, that's our record credit count by student. And this report is not only useful to the indicators, but you could take a look to make sure all of your students were correctly reported. So again, you could drill down by school. At the top, there's a drop-down menu. I selected a high school for this particular report. So what I would recommend doing is sorting by total credits earned. You could sort both up and down. In this case, there's 5 students displayed who earned no credits. However, they were taking 12 and 13 classes. So that could be true, or perhaps there is a value in these students' records that was not correctly reported. So I would recommend, in terms of indicator 7 or in terms of just your data in general, to review these records to ensure that everything was correctly reported. Okay, next slide. I believe we're back to Renee.
Yeah, I think I just want to, before we leave this indicator, just to sort of mention, I mean, I think there's a lot going on here. We've tried to scaffold the indicators in a way from the simplest to the more complex ones. So the key point I want to emphasize with that whole 8th grade, 9th grade point is if you're an 8th grade school, that you don't serve 9th grade, then you're going to be held, there's no double counting that comes into play because you're only dealing with your 8th grade kids. If you're a school that's a 9-12 regular high school, you're only dealing with your 9th grade students. It's simple. It's when you get into typically a district view, a K-12 district is where you end up with that double counting scenario that comes into play. Prior year 8th graders, current year 9th graders, et cetera. So if you're looking at it from a school perspective and it's a K-8 school or a 9-12 school, it's clean and it's reasonably simple. But so just be mindful of that. We're not doing the double count when it's a clean K-8 school or a 9-12 school. There is a question in the chat. Does summer school credits impact this data in any fashion? And Corinne, I think I'm going to just ask you to speak to the TCS submission timeframe, which allows for summer school credits to be reported to us as part of that fiscal year that ended June 30th. So please go ahead on that point.
So typically our collections only cover that July 1st to June 30th time period, which is a school year. However, if the course is being used as a credit recovery course, you could certainly, and we want you to report it in that current year TCS collection.
I hope that answers your question. Any other questions on indicator 7? You're welcome. On track. Any other questions on that indicator? A little wait time. Key point so far, use those TCS reports. They are your early indication of whether you have reported all your data or not. Quick, simple checks will tell you if they look complete or not. And thank you, Corinne, for posting those links. Renee, I turn it back to you. I don't see any other questions. We can keep going.
Okay, so indicator 5, what we're saying is the more complicated indicator. I don't know, 7 was pretty complicated. So indicator 5, post-secondary preparation. This is the percentage of students in grades 11 and 12. So we're looking at students in 2 grades participating in at least one of the following during high school. So this is a cumulative credit. We are specifically looking for 2 courses in the AP IB dual enrollment sort of family, or 2 CTE courses in one of the 17 career clusters, so a focused in CTE in one particular area, or 2 workplace experience courses in any area. So there are lots of different ways to meet the mark on indicator 5. Before I go into, or turn it over to Danielle to go into some of the specifics of the calculation, there's some shifting language that's happening at the State Department of Ed, and specifically with reporting accountability. And so I want to go over what some of those tweaks are, just so that we're all on the same page. You'll see indicator 5, I'm calling it post-secondary preparation. There are a lot of other places where you're going to see it referred to as CCR, College and Career Readiness Course Taking. That was the name that we used from the very beginning of the implementation of this system in 14-15. We're shifting our language a little for a variety of reasons, but I can tell you that the indicator 5 calculation hasn't changed. You just see a language change. So some of that older language you might see in the TCS system in those reports. Just want to let you know it's the same thing. Another point is dual credit. We're doing a lot at the State Department of Education to try to promote the expansion of dual credit offerings for students. We have moved away from calling it dual enrollment and instead are using this umbrella term of dual credit. And under that dual credit umbrella, we are referring to concurrent enrollment classes, which are classes that students are taking on the high school campus, where they're also earning college credit, and dual enrollment courses, which typically are happening on the college campus. So students are getting high school credit and college credit, but they're doing it on the college campus. They all fall under dual credit. You're going to see some of that older language, the dual enrollment heading, in some of the TCS reports. So in this presentation and in the examples we're providing, we're kind of using dual credit and dual enrollment interchangeably. Just wanted to clarify that. And then finally, the CTE courses, The State Department or the Performance Office announced through its newsletter about a year ago that the academic office was doing some remapping specifically of family and consumer science courses to other career clusters. So the plan was for us to go down to 16 career clusters and have a remapping of the courses. And that work is actually still underway. We announced back in September that things were on hold, and that is still true. I want you here to know that we are not making changes to this mapping for 22, 23. You're going to have we're using exactly what we have online, posted online, and you're also going to see those same mappings in 23, 24. Any potential changes aren't going to go into effect until TCS reporting for 24, 25. So you can expect to hear from the academic office in the coming months about exactly what those mapping changes are and what the implications will be at the local level. So I would say keep your eyes peeled for that update. But for now, we're sticking with CTE courses in 17 career clusters, and we're sticking with that for at least another year. Turning it over to Danielle. Take it away.
Thanks. I see. It's better that you explain that stuff. I'll explain the calculations much easier. Okay, so indicator 5, there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So the first thing, and Renee mentioned this, I think it's important to remember that the two courses must be within the same course type. So you can mix AP and IB and dual enrollment or dual credit classes, but so one AP Calc class plus one IB Spanish class is on track. However, you cannot mix AP courses with, say, workplace experience or AP courses with CTE clusters. So has to be two courses within that same grouping. Specifically with CTE courses, they have to be in the same cluster. So you can't have one from information tech and one from, the business management. It has to be two courses in the same class. Not to say that students can't take classes from more than one cluster, but you do have to have at least two within that same cluster. And it's also good to remember that these courses can count toward more than one course type. So for example, AP Computer Science is, of course, an AP course, but it's also listed as a CTE Information Technology course. So, you can use that in the same way. Your dual enrollment or dual credit courses work the same way. So if you have a business law course that you're running concurrent enrollment with, let's say, a local community college or something, that can count as a dual enrollment course, but it can also count as a CTE business management course or a CTE law public safety course. So you want to make sure that you're looking at all the different options when in there. The CTE course mappings are the CTE course mappings are also in the quick links. I think they were also in that slide before linked. So make sure that you're taking a look at those CTE course codes so that you're sure you know which one it's going to.
And let me just pause. There's a question from Dave here, Dave Lewandowski. Wouldn't the way you've coded the course determine which category it falls in? And I think the answer to that is yes, is that the course code is what determines it, but it's important to know the mapping so that you know that a particular course code is mapped to this CTE cluster. I think it's important to know that. In the case of AP, I believe I don't know, Danielle, did you want to jump in on that, elaborate on that question? Wouldn't the way you've coded the course determine which category it falls in?
Yes. I think the key here is to make sure that you're coding the course the way that you want it to appear with us, right? So, and we'll talk about a couple examples of that, but yes, the way you've coded it will determine, but you also have to remember that so we talked about subject codes for indicator 12, right? That 05. So in SCED codes, you also have you also have subject area codes for things like information technology and manufacturing and those CTE clusters, but those don't necessarily map to CTE courses. That's just the SCED code. That's just the SCED subject area code. So in order to make sure that the courses you have are mapping to a CTE cluster, you need to use the CTE cluster mappings that we have posted on the TCS help site. I don't know if hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so as Renee said, indicator 5 is a cumulative look back across all the courses taken in grades 9 through 12. But only your 11th and 12th graders are going to be assessed in the indicator. So let's say you've got a really brilliant student takes 2 AP courses in 9th grade. They have 2 AP courses, so they've met the requirements for indicator 5, but they aren't going to get counted in 9th grade. They're not going to get counted in 10th grade. And then once they get to 11th grade, they'll be counted even if they haven't taken any other AP classes. So it cumulatively looks back across all of those years. And similarly, when a student repeats a grade, so we talked about that for indicator 7, with indicator 5, the courses taken in both years are going to count. So if the student takes 5 years to graduate, for example, we're going to use all 5 of those grades, or all 5 of those years across the 4 grades. So sort of the opposite here for indicator 5 with students who repeat a grade. Okay, so AP, IB, CTE, and workplace experience courses are all course level properties. So when I say a course level property, I mean that as soon as you enter that SCED code into TCS, that course is going to register as being an AP course or an IB course or a CTE course or a workplace experience course. So there's no extra work. It goes in, we know automatically you've got an AP class, or for example, dual enrollment or dual credit courses, which include ECE courses, are student course record properties, which means that each student needs to have the dual enrollment field completed for that course. So, so when you go into TCS, rather than that one course applying to all the students in it, with the dual enrollment, dual credit courses, you need to make sure that each student has that dual enrollment field completed, because it's a property of the courses. It's a property of the student's enrollment in that course, because you could have a dual enrollment course in which only some of the students are enrolled for college credit and the rest of the students are not. So you want to make sure that that you're going in and you're only giving that credit if the student had, or you're only filling it out in TCS as a dual enrollment credit if the student is actually enrolled in that college, in the program to get the college credit. So you got to make sure that it's in there for each student. Otherwise we don't know that it's happening. And along those lines, your course, as the question that was asked, you have to make sure that the course codes you're entering are the ones for, if it's an AP class, you need to make sure that you're using the AP class course code. Same with IB courses. So for example, 02, which is math, 203 is AP statistics, but 02205 is statistics, not AP. So while they have very similar course descriptions, it doesn't seem like it makes a difference. If you code an AP statistics class as 02205, we have no way of giving you credit for those AP AP course enrollments. So you have to make sure that if you're teaching an AP class, an IB class, that you're using the course code that applies for that course. For CTE, it just lost my place. Okay. So for CTE courses, it's important, as we talked about, that it be within that course cluster. So, so I've got an example of 4 classes here. We've got mechatronics, refrigeration, marine mechanics, and industrial art. So mechatronics is listed in both the manufacturing and the transportation clusters. So if a student takes mechatronics and takes marine mechanics is listed as a transportation course. So they'll have 2 courses in transportation, they meet the criteria for indicator 5. Or if they take mechatronics and industrial art, because industrial art is a manufacturing course, they'll have 2 courses in the manufacturing cluster, they meet the criteria for indicator 5. But if the student takes mechatronics and say refrigeration, well, refrigeration is in the architecture and construction cluster. So now they've got 1 in manufacturing, 1 in transportation, but it's not going to match the 1 in architecture construction. So the mechatronics plus refrigeration will not meet the criteria. And yeah, so just it has to be 2 within that same cluster. And again, be mindful that the CTE course clusters do not necessarily align with that 2-digit subject code at the beginning. So for instance, that mechatronics class couldn't appear in both manufacturing and transportation in the SCED code, right? So it appears in one, but it will apply to both. I think that's everything I have. I hand it off to Corinne.
There's a question that just came up in chat. I'm not sure if that one's one Danielle wants to address. I know it's something we
Yes.
on our end sometimes.
It was right at the bottom of the slide and I missed it. Yes. So if you have a mechatronics part 1 and a mechatronics part 2, same SCED code, they will count as only 1 course if those 2 courses were taken in the same year. So if the student takes mechatronics 1 in 10th grade, takes mechatronics 2 in 11th grade, that will appear as 2 separate courses. If they take mechatronics 1 in half the year and then mechatronics 2 the other half of the year or something like that, they'll actually only count as 1 course, because we don't have because we get a lot of the courses as semester. So we don't know if you're giving them semester 1 of 2 of the same course, or if it's 2 separate courses, if that makes sense. So if you've got the same SCED code across semesters, then within the same year, then they're going to count as 1. Note that only really applies to indicator 5. So for indicator 7, the on track to graduation, when you've got those 2 course codes, the same course code, those 2 sets of credits will get added. They'll get summed, because whether it was 2 separate semesters or 2 separate courses, we're still going to take the sum of that. So that's only something you have to worry about for indicator 5.
And only if it is the same SCED code within the same year for those 2 cases. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll give Danielle a little breakdown. So you might recall from the TCS indicator 12, or the report that matches indicator 12, that one matched pretty closely. Indicator 7, we got a little bit farther away. Indicator 5 does not match completely, because in terms of next generation, there's multiple years of TCS data used. Whereas the report online, the college and career readiness within TCS, is only looking at 1 year of data. Now, something important to note about all of those TCS reports I showed you, including this one, is they're all live reports. So something going on with your data, you go ahead, you load a new file, you make some changes, you'll immediately see that reflected in those TCS reports. So we could go ahead onto the next slide to see an example of our college and career readiness report. So you could see here that we have our P count, IB count, dual enrollment codes, PT cluster count, workplace experience. Following suit with all other reports, you can export that table. You could click on those numbers to see which students are in those particular figures. Now, during the next generation review process, the TCS next generation review process, districts have an opportunity to see the full calculations. So not just what's on this report, the actual numbers of the TCS of the next generation indicator. So when TCS is open, your district could go in and update these numbers to update your next generation scores. Okay, so we can move on. We're going to go over a couple different items that are housed within TCS that could really help you review your data and just some general information. So a little known fact is that you could view TCS prior year data. If you log on and go to the top of your screen, you could select change and you could see everything from the beginning of time in TCS. This could be especially helpful if you wanted to review how a certain student was coded, or there's a specific course that you're not quite how coded in previous years. Very useful to new users. When I have training with new users, I say, you know what, go back and see what your district's normal is and see if those numbers match. Of course, there might be reasons that the numbers don't match. So just keep that in. So we're going to, and TCS. Next slide.
I think, Corinne, is that just me or is your audio really starting to break up now?
You know, when Danielle was speaking, it's breaking up as well.
No, I think it's
So
maybe you should try having your video off just so that you can maybe your audio will come through.
Okay. Hopefully that's better. And all of this information that is reiterated when I email districts. It's all on the help site, so I'll try to go a little slower. Hopefully that helps with the audio. So TCS is open right now. It's highly recommended that you report any completed courses, including half-year courses now, so that way you get that head start. Sometimes districts miss their mid-year courses, and that affects your next generation indicators. Stepping through the timeline, deadline is July 11th. All of your data should be reported by this time, and then you have another month to review your data. Within those two dates, July 11th and August 25th, the TCS Next Generation Review reports will come out. So these cover only indicators 5, 7, and 12, because those are the only indicators coming from TCS. Again, that is your district's opportunity to update your data. The freeze date is September 1st. I cannot emphasize enough that that is a hard date. We cannot make changes to the data after that date. Even if you call up Ajit and beg, we cannot have changes made to the data after that date. And every year we have districts notice either in this collection or other collections that mistakes have been made. And unfortunately, again, we cannot change that data. So moving on to the next slide, I believe Renee is going to start, and then I'm going to finish that slide.
So we wanted to just have a place where we showed you kind of the end product. So all of this collection and QA that's happening at the local level eventually is reported publicly on EdSite through the next gen reports that you're all accustomed to, which are the legacy reports. They're in a table form. We also have new data visualization. So hopefully you've had a chance to play around with the dashboard. The data are driving the dashboard. Our PPRs, the profile and performance reports, there's TCS data embedded in those reports, and then also CT report cards. So all places where that public reporting is out there for everyone to see. And at that stage, we are far beyond any opportunity to make changes. So I think those all the various verification reports that we got to take a look at today are really helpful in avoiding surprises and in many cases disappointment, and that the district or school is not represented appropriately. So the TCS help site stuff, Corinne, I'll turn it to you for that.
Okay, so I cannot emphasize enough, TCS help site has everything you need. All of the links I put in the chat are on the help site. The user guide is in there that has all of your dual enrollment codes that I believe Danielle was talking about dual enrollment. There's also step-by-step information on how to actually use the system. That beautiful slide that Danielle did with all of the colored boxes is even better when you click on the next generation indicator slide on the TCS help site. It really walks you through that information. The course codes and CTS clusters are all in one Excel spreadsheet. The first tab is your course codes, tabs 2 and 3 are your clusters. Certification checklist. So all of these reports I went over today, emphasizing how to review and clean your data, are in the certification checklist. This checklist is sent prior to certification, so districts know exactly what they should step through to review their data. And then finally is the LEA security managers list. If you don't have access to TCS, and you should, you would contact your LEA security manager. And the big takeaway I'm trying to give here with all of my bullet points under the help site is the help site has a wealth of information. These are the tools available to your district. It's updated regularly, so please visit it. And that's all I have for this slide.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of this particular session. Before I queue up the next sessions, are there any questions about the content we've shared in this session? We started with indicator 12, arts access. We went to indicator 7, the on track, and talked about how the 8th grade students from the prior year, 9th grade students from the current year, and all of that. And then we got to indicator 5. We talked about how it's really a longitudinal view, really all, looking back in all of high school and how we kind of, add up those accomplishments of our students through their high school years, to reflect on those indicators. We talked about how dual enrollment, I think, or dual credit, I think it's an important point, is a student course attribute that for the kids in that class, you need to actually indicate which of the kids in that class are getting dual credit. So all of those were mentioned as well. So I think we've covered a lot here. So before we get to the future, are there any questions in this session, in the topics covered in this session? And you can raise your hand too. So we have a couple of minutes here so we can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question orally. John, I've unmuted you. You should be, yep, there you go.
All right, thank you. So I see that how the CTE cluster data is collected by TCS. Is there work to put there used to be a CONA report in EdSite that would report a district's number of students within a particular cluster. Is particularly useful for calculating Perkins information. Is there any work to redevelop that or publish that again?
Yes, we will try to make that. We had some questions about that mapping that was used for that. So we have to revisit that, and then we do plan to make it available for Perkins. Just note that in indicators 5, we're including all the clusters, but for Perkins accountability, they prioritize 12 of those clusters. So while the notion of who is a concentrator, that idea might be the same, the clusters included are different. So we do have to revisit that. Thank you for pointing that out. I mean, with everything else going on, that was one that was not highest on our radar, but I'm glad you raised that question. We will go back and look to see how that CLNA report can be repopulated back in EdSite Secure. Danielle, is there anything you wanted to add on that at this point? Okay. See, you're welcome, John. Any other questions? All right. Just to close out this session, we have 2 more sessions coming up. If you haven't registered, please go ahead and you can register. I'm going to put a link to the flyer that's online for this series. So that's the link. You can register for the 2nd and 3rd sessions. In the next session on May 12th, Friday, same time, we're going to be talking about the contacts report and chronic absenteeism indicator. In some ways, those are a lot simpler than the complexity we had to deal with these 3 indicators, but we'll review that on May 12th. And then on June 2nd, we're going to spend some time on the post-secondary readiness report, where we get data from our college partners and actually populate that post-secondary readiness report, as well as AP and IB and SAT and ACT and all that. So, and the last slide here has our contacts, the 4 of us here. Again, we will send the PDF of this slide deck along with a link to the recording once we have it cleaned up and up on YouTube. We'll send a link to that as well. To you who attended today and to all registered individuals for this session. So are there any other, Renee, any last words here? Are we good?
I think we're good. You have our contact information. If you have follow-up questions, you need some clarification, we're all here and happy to collaborate with you in answering the questions that you need for your staff and for the families in your community. So whatever we can do to help, we want to do it.
All right, awesome. On that excellent note, we will call it an afternoon and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.